I'll eat your fucking face off. Well, that's not exactly the best way to create a healthy environment to raise two teenage boys, is it? The Long Dark Trail was written and directed by Kevin Ignatius and Nick Sinakis. If I mispronounce those names, I do apologize. They had done shorts as well as a feature film called My Best Friend's Famous. And it centers around two teenage boys, Henry and Jacob, who aren't living exactly in the best conditions as far as a household, emotionally, physically, or even surroundings, because their dad is very, very abusive. Very abusive. A drunk, an abuser, tortures one with an iron, and just generally is a full-on goddamn dick for no real apparent reason, but they've had enough. They are saying, that's it. We're going to find a way to escape his clutches. And they do. And then they find a way to get some information about where their mother might be. Then they get supplies, they get some money, and they set out into the northwest Pennsylvania woods, traveling through various locations, and they have fever dreams and strange things happening, and all the while they're just trying to find their mother to find out why their mother basically left them to be tortured by their dad. So this movie could be classified as a fever dream and also experimental horror. And I will say right now that a few things I'm going to praise are the atmosphere. The atmosphere is quite well captured. And also the music. The music is very well done. Apparently was done by one of the directors, Kevin. And even performed. And there's actually some really good music here. Some good lyrics. Some good haunting, some good haunting music that can get inside your head. It sets a really good atmosphere and has some beautiful locations. And obviously was made for, I imagine, a pretty, small amount of money. And that's not a deal breaker. That's not a deal breaker at all. If you are, if you have enough ingenuity, you can make an idea work in the confines of really any budget. And these guys do, for the most part. I will say where the movie does fail, I don't think the acting was all that great. It wasn't the worst I've seen, but that's kind of where things get let down a little bit. And also, things just happen. Like, certain things just occur, and there's not necessarily no story. There's just not a full-on, fully detailed story. It lets you see these images and interpret them in your own way. It is about two boys basically leaving one environment to try and figure out what happened with their mother, and maybe finding out maybe the grass isn't always greener on the other side, and also they are haunted by various things that have happened to them, and they come at a crossroads, see you at the crossroads, so you won't be lonely. But we do get flashbacks of how their dad abused them, and we also get chapter breaks. And the chapter breaks do make sense, and as far as technically speaking, this movie actually nails it quite well. I do give props to the writers and directors. I mean, as if my opinion matters at all. I'm just a guy that watches movies, that's all. But I do appreciate what they were trying to do. I can't necessarily say the movie's great, but it has a few, great moments. Like I said, the music, the atmosphere, and the setting. The setting is very haunting, and they make the most of the limited resources that they have. And some very beautiful atmospheric shots, like overhead of the woods. And once things kick in a little bit, it does get a little bit haunting, but there aren't really a whole lot of scares. There's a lack of stakes to really sink your teeth into, or vegan steaks, or whatever it is that vegans eat. There's a lack of things to really sink your teeth into at the end of the day, but the movie does end up having some good stuff as far as anything to praise. But I recommend you guys watch it for yourself. It's available on Amazon for $5-6, something like that. Depends on the taxes. Pay the money, rent it, and support the artist, because that way they can go, just a few bucks here and there helps. It's a way to support the artist, and they can go on to do bigger and better projects. And there's some promise here. Again, not everything's great. Some things are a bit of a letdown. But overall, the movie does end up having more positives than negatives. That much I will say. I am going to get into spoilers right now, just so you know. Spoilers will not take very long. That is what it is. So 3, 2, 1, and spoilers. Okay, so yeah, the Henry and Jacob basically zip tie their dad during chapter 1. Well, actually, they zip tie him before that, and he's like, "I'll eat your fucking face off," because the dad's clearly goddamn insane. We go to chapter 1, Absconded. We see how abusive the dad was. There's a neighbor named Mr. Barrow, or Barrow, wheelbarrow as it were, I imagine, that Jacob has done lawn work for. And even though Mr. Barrow is a nice elderly man that is blind in one eye, and hence why he has Jacob do the lawn work, he gets money from him and kind of takes money from him. And then also we find out that they have taken things from him before, and he knows, but he's like, whatever. They're good kids. They'll learn, or karma will get them, or whatever. And they go to find the mom, basically. And Henry is more driven to do this than Jacob. Jacob just wanted to really be by the creek all summer. Chapter 2, provisions, that's when they steal all the stuff and everything. And then we hear also from this neighbor about a military vehicle going into the woods into a place called Pit Hole. Like Pit Hole, that's a bit of a weird area, bit of a weird name. And also one of the boys worked at a construction site because they needed money somehow. And then chapter 3, viaduct. They go along into the woods. At one point, Henry gets bitten on the neck by a bug, and he's acting all strange, just like he's getting a weird fever, and the only prescription is more weird imagery. And then we see weird images of, women in a cult, and that is actually the big twist, is that the mother is part of some cult in the northwest Pennsylvania woods, but they have to go out and find her and figure out why the hell she abandoned them. And then we get to chapter 4, boulders. Henry's neck is getting worse, getting to the point where he's feverish. And are they going insane, or is this shit legit happening? Jacob eventually sees his reflection in one of the lakes, or one of the streams, rather. Then we get to Lake. That's the next chapter. That's chapter 5, where nothing really happens. I mean, that's a pretty short chapter. And considering the movie is only 78 minutes long with end credits, pretty lengthy end credits, yeah, these chapters aren't very long. Chapter 6, Pines are in the woods. To Mother's cult we go, hey, hey. And then we cut to a guy named Zeke that's killing somebody. The blood of the male repeated. I think the blood of the male made up about 10% of the dialogue here. Because there were large portions of this where the music was overlaying and there was no dialogue while these boys were walking. Good music, don't get me wrong. Very good music. It's just the times where I was like, okay, now we're just doing this instead of letting the actors act, but nevertheless, creates some interesting atmosphere. And they find their mother. She says, I can't come home yet, and he can't see you. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, because Semisonic was apparently part of this cult. I kid. We go to chapter 7, Mom, and they were like, we're going to get her while she's asleep. They try to. This guy Zeke captures them, and he's going to sacrifice them. The mother is chained. Then the mother is not chained because she is freed by a couple of the women, and she kills this guy Zeke, who did not have a lot of conviction in talking about the blood of the innocents. Again, the acting was a bit of a... I'm not even knocking the people because I'm sure they were trying. The acting wasn't all that great. But she kills him, and now she must take care of them, and she says, y'all need to go on and, just go home. She's going to help them, and she's going to explain herself one day and come home to them. So they do. They're freed to do what they want any old time, and they go. And then the dad had been hiding out near the area where they left their bikes, and then drove behind them, and that's where we ended our movie. He either ran them down, ran them off the goddamn road like the Creeper in Jeepers Creepers, or who knows what happened. So that being said, it's experimental horror. It has some good atmosphere, some good music, not very good acting, but I will give credit from a technical standpoint, so bravo to the directors/writers. B-, gets a B-. I recommend watching it. Maybe you guys will enjoy it more than I did. Not a ton happens at the end of the day, but it's a good way to see experimentation take place. So there you go. B-. Agree, disagree what I said? Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm Charmatlin. I'll see you soon.